Hi, everybody. It's Dispeller. All my Dispellers out there, where are you? Come on in, and we're going to get started on the new book, Boundaries. No, I did not finish dealing with people you can't stand. I did promise people that I would be doing that one on Sunday. So tomorrow at 1, I will do that book. We will read that book and discuss it if anybody wants to discuss it. But for now, I'm going to begin with the Boundaries book. I know Mommy Mars said she couldn't wait for the Boundaries book chapter. So I'm going to start with A Day in a Boundaryless Life. Just want to give credit where credit is due. I did not write this book. Henry Cloud and John Townsend, who are really good at helping people overcome codependency. They've written a lot of books together about this topic. You want to know who they are? This is what they look like right here. So all credit goes to them. All right. Hopefully you enjoyed this series more than you enjoyed the last one, because I know a lot of people did not enjoy dealing with people you can't stand. Well, nobody enjoys dealing with people they can't stand, but the book is what I'm talking about. But it did give a lot of good tips. So hopefully you found something valuable in that book. Maybe this will be more to your liking and more helpful to you, hopefully. All right, I'm going to get right into it. As always, feel free to chat in the side chat if you come in. I don't know why I bother to say that, because it's showing 0 here, so I'm talking to myself, telling you to feel free to chat in the side chat. Nobody's hearing that. Maybe later on you'll hear it, and then you can not chat in side chat because it'll be over. You can chat below in the comments. And I hope you will leave me some comments. I love comments. All right, A Day in a Boundaryless Life. 6:00 a.m. The alarm jangled. Bleary-eyed from too little sleep, Sherry shut off the noisy intruder, turned on the bedside lamp, and sat up in bed. Looking blankly at the wall, she tried to get her bearings. Why am I dreading this day? Lord, didn't you promise me a life of joy? Then, as the cobwebs left her mind, Sherry remembered the reason for her dread. The 4:00 meeting with Todd's third-grade teacher. The phone call returned to her memory. Sherry, this is Jean Russell. I wonder if we could meet about Todd's performance and his behavior. Todd couldn't keep still and listen to his teachers. He didn't even listen to Sherry and Walt. Todd was such a strong-willed child, and she didn't want to quench his spirit. Wasn't that more important? Well, no time to worry about all that, Sherry said to herself, raising her 35-year-old body off the bed and padding to the shower. I've got enough troubles to keep me busy all day. Under the shower, Sherry's mind moved out of first gear. She began mentally ticking off the day's schedule. Todd 9 and Amy 6 would have been a handful if she weren't a working mother. Let's see, fix breakfast, pack 2 lunches, and finish sewing Amy's costume for the school play. That'll be a trick, finishing sewing costume before the carpool picks her up at 7:45 a.m. Sherry thought regretfully about last night. She'd planned to work on Amy's costume then, using her talents to make a special day for her little girl. But her mother had dropped over unexpectedly. Good manners dictated that she play hostess, and another evening was shot. The memories of her attempts to salvage the time weren't pretty. Trying to be diplomatic, Sherry artfully told her mother, You can't imagine how much I enjoy your surprise visits, Mom. But I was wondering, would you mind if I sew Amy's costume while we talk? Sherry cringed inwardly, correctly anticipating her mother's response. Sherry, you know I'd be the last to intrude on your time with your family. Sherry's mother, widowed for 12 years, had elevated her widowhood to the status of martyrdom. I mean, since your father died, it's been such an empty time. I still miss our family. How could I deprive you of that for yourself? I bet I'll find out how, Sherry thought to herself. That's why I can understand why you don't bring Walt. I can't understand why you don't bring Walt and the children to see me much anymore. How could I be entertaining? I'm just a lonely old lady who gave her entire life to her children. Who would want to spend any time with me? No, Mom, no. Sherry quickly joined the emotional minuet she and her mom had been dancing for decades. That's not what I meant at all. I mean, it's so special having you over. Goodness knows with our schedule, we'd like to visit more, but we just haven't been able to. That's why I'm so glad you took the initiative. Lord, don't strike me dead for this little lie, she prayed silently. In fact, I can do the costume any old time, Sherry said. Forgive me for this lie, too. Now, why don't I make us some coffee? Her mother sighed. All right, if you insist, but I just hate to think I'm intruding. The visit lasted well into the night. By the time her mother left, Sherry felt absolutely crazy, but she justified it to herself. At least I've helped make her lonely day a little brighter. Then a pesky voice piped up. If you helped so much, why was she still talking about her loneliness when she left? Trying to ignore the thought, Sherry went to bed. 6:45 a.m. Sherry returned to the present. No use crying over spilt time, I guess, she mumbled to herself as she struggled to close the zipper of her black linen skirt. Her favorite suit had become, as many others had, too tight. Middle age spread so soon, she thought. This week, I really have to go on a diet and start exercising. The next hour was, as usual, a disaster. The kids whined about getting out of bed, and Walt complained, Can't you get the kids to the table on time? 7:45 a.m. Miraculously, the kids made it to their rides. Walt left for work in his car, and Sherry went out and locked the front door after her. Taking a deep breath, she prayed silently, Lord, I'm not looking forward to this day. Give me something to hope for. In her car on the freeway, she finished applying her makeup. Thank the Lord for traffic jams. 8:45 a.m. Rushing into McAllister Enterprises, where she worked as a fashion consultant, Sherry glanced at her watch. Only a few minutes late. Maybe by now her colleagues understood that being late was a way of life for her and did not expect her to be on time. She was wrong. They'd started the weekly executive meeting without her. Sherry tried to tiptoe in without being noticed, but every eye was on her as she struggled into her seat. Glancing around, she gave a fleeting smile and muttered something about that crazy traffic. The rest of Sherry's morning proceeded fairly well. A talented fashion designer, Sherry had an unerring eye for attractive clothing and was a valuable asset to McAllister. The only hitch came just before lunch. Her extension rang. Sherry Phillips? Sherry, thank goodness you're there. I don't know what I'd have done if you'd been at lunch. There was no mistaking the voice. Sherry had known Lois Thompson since grade school. A high-strung woman, Lois was always in crisis. Sherry had always tried to make herself available to Lois to be there for her. But Lois never asked Sherry how she was doing. And when Sherry mentioned her struggles, Lois either changed the subject or had to leave. I actually know somebody like that. This is interesting that this book literally is following right after the book we just got done about setting boundaries and dealing with people you can't stand. It's ironic almost, but really intriguing to me. Sherry genuinely loved Lois and was concerned about her problems, but Lois seemed more like a client than a friend. Sherry resented the imbalance in their friendship. As always, Sherry felt guilty when she thought about her anger at Lois. As a Christian, she knew the value the Bible placed on loving and helping others. There I go again, she'd say to herself, thinking of myself before others. Please, Lord, let me give to Lois freely and not be so self-centered. Sherry asked, What's the matter, Lois? It's horrible, just horrible, Lois said. Anne was sent home from school today. Tom was denied his promotion, and my car gave out on the freeway. This is what my life's like every day, Sherry thought to herself, feeling the resentment rising. However, she merely said, Lois, you poor thing, how are you coping with all this? Lois was happy to answer Sherry's question in great detail. So much detail that Sherry missed half her lunch break, consoling her friend. Well, she thought, fast food's better than no food. Sitting at the drive-thru, waiting for her chicken burger, Sherry thought about Lois. If all my listening, consoling, and advice had made any difference over the years, maybe it would be worth it. But Lois makes the same mistakes now that she made 20 years ago. Why do I do this to myself? 4:00 p.m. Sherry's afternoon passed uneventfully. She was on the way out of the office to the teachers' meeting when her boss, Jeff Moreland, flagged her down. Glad I caught up with you, Sherry, he said. A successful figure at McAllister Enterprises, Jeff made things happen. Trouble was, Jeff often used other people to make things happen. Sherry could sense the 100th verse of the same old song tuning up again. Listen, I'm in a time crunch, he said, handing her a large sheaf of papers. This is the data for the final recommendations for the Kimbrough account. All it needs is a little writing and editing, and it's due tomorrow. But I'm sure it'll be no problem for you. He smiled ingratiatingly. Sorry, that's a hard word to say. Sherry panicked. Jeff's editing needs were legendary, hefting the papers in her hands. Sherry saw a minimum of 5 hours work. I had this data into him 3 weeks ago, she thought furiously. Where does this man get off having me save his face for his deadline? Quickly, she composed herself. Sure, Jeff. It's no problem at all. Glad I can help. What time do you need it? 9 o'clock would be fine. And thanks, Sherry. I always think of you first when I'm in a jam. You're so dependable. Jeff strolled away. It's interesting. His name is Jeff. We had a Jeff in the other book, too. And no, Jeff B. It's not you, as you know. Dependable, faithful, reliable, Sherry thought. I've always been described this way by people who wanted something from me. Sounds like a description of a good mule. Suddenly, the guilt hit again. There I am, getting resentful again. Lord help me, bloom where I'm planted. But secretly, she found herself wishing she could be transplanted to another flower pot. 4:30 p.m. Jean Russell was a competent teacher, one of many in the profession who understood the complex factors beneath a child's problem behavior. The meeting with Todd's teacher began as so many before, minus Walt. Todd's father hadn't been able to get off work, so the two women talked alone. He's not a bad child, Sherry, Mrs. Russell assured her. Todd is a bright, energetic boy. When he minds, he's one of the most enjoyable kids in the class. Sherry waited for the axe to fall. Just get to the point, Jean. I have a problem, child, don't I? What's new? I have a problem life to go with it. Sensing Sherry's discomfort, the teacher pressed ahead. The problem is that Todd doesn't respond well to limits. For example, during our task period, when children work on assignments, Todd has great difficulty. He gets up from his desk, pesters other kids, and won't stop talking. When I mention to him that his behavior is inappropriate, he becomes enraged and obstinate. Sherry felt defensive about her only son. Maybe Todd has an attention deficit problem or he's hyperactive. Mrs. Russell shook her head. When Todd's second grade teacher wondered about that last year, psychological testing ruled that out. Todd stays on task very well when he's interested in the subject. I'm no therapist, but it seems to me that he's just not used to responding to rules. Now Sherry's defensiveness turned from Todd to herself. Are you saying this is some sort of a home problem? Mrs. Russell looked uncomfortable. As I said, I'm not a counselor. I just know that in third grade, most children resist rules. But Todd is off the scale. Anytime I tell him to do something he doesn't want to, it's World War III. And since all his intellectual and cognitive testing comes out normal, I was just wondering how things were at home. Sherry no longer tried to hold back the tears. She buried her head in her hands and wept convulsively for a few minutes, feeling overwhelmed with everything. Eventually, her crying subsided. I'm sorry. I guess this just hit on a bad day. Sherry rummaged in her purse for a tissue. No, it's more than that. Jean, I need to be honest with you. Your problems with him are the same as mine. Walt and I have a real struggle making Todd mind at home. When we're playing or talking, Todd is the most wonderful son I could imagine, but anytime I have to discipline him, the tantrums are more than I can handle. So I guess I don't have any solutions for you. Jean nodded her head slowly. It really helps me, Sherry, to know that Todd's behavior is a problem at home, too. At least now we can put our heads together on a solution. 5:15 p.m. Sherry felt strangely grateful for the afternoon rush hour traffic. At least there's no one tugging on me here, she thought. She used the time to plan around her next crises: kids, dinner, Jeff's project, church, and Walt. And before we continue, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe, hit the little thumb up button, share the video, and ring the bell so you don't miss future uploads. I will go through this whole entire Boundaries book with you, so we can all learn about boundaries and maybe set some for ourselves if we need to. All right. 6:30 p.m. For the fourth and last time, dinner's ready. Sherry hated to scream, but what else worked? The kids and Walt always seemed to shuffle in whenever they felt like it. More often than not, dinner was cold by the time everyone was assembled. This was back when people actually ate dinner together at the table. You know, setting the table. And yeah, I know, foreign concept at this point for a lot of people, including me. Sherry had no clue what the problem was. She knew it wasn't the food because she was a good cook. Besides, once they got to the table, everyone inhaled it in seconds. Hi, KK Bronson. I'm just reading from the Boundaries book right here. Just telling Sherry's story, this lady in here. And pretty much she's ripping her hair out because everything that could go wrong is going wrong. Her son is having trouble in school, and she feels like everything is being put on her shoulders, and people are assuming upon her to do their jobs, kind of like what we were reading in the Dealing with People You Can't Stand book. Kind of goes right along with that. Okay. Everyone but Amy inhaled it in seconds, the food. Watching her daughter sit silently, picking distractedly at her food, Sherry again felt uneasy. Amy was such a lovable, sensitive child. Why was she so reserved? Amy had never been outgoing. She preferred to spend her time reading, painting, or just sitting in her bedroom thinking about stuff. Honey, what kind of stuff? Sherry would probe. Just stuff, would be the usual reply. Sherry felt shut out of her daughter's life. She dreamed of mother-daughter talks, conversations for just us girls, shopping trips. But Amy had a secret place deep inside where no one was ever invited. This unreachable part of her daughter's heart, Sherry ached to touch. I understand that. My one daughter, same thing. I never got that daughter-mother thing with her either. 7:00 p.m. Halfway through dinner, the phone rang. We really need to get an answering machine to handle calls during dinner, Sherry thought. There's precious little time for us to be together as a family anymore. Then, as if on cue, another familiar thought struck her. It might be someone who needs me. As always, Sherry listened to the second voice in her head and jumped up from the table to answer the phone. Before we had cell phones, I guess this book was written. Her heart sank as she recognized the voice on the other end. Hope I'm not disturbing anything, said Phyllis Renfro, the women's ministries leader at church. Certainly you aren't disturbing anything, Sherry lied again. Sherry, I'm in deep water, Phyllis said. Margie was going to be our activities coordinator at the retreat, and now she's canceled. Something about priorities at home. Any way you can pitch in? The retreat. Sherry had almost forgotten that the annual gathering of church women was this weekend. She had actually been looking forward to leaving the kids and Walt behind and strolling around the beautiful mountainous area for 2 days, just herself and the Lord. In fact, the possibility of solitude felt better to her than the planned group activities. Taking on Margie's activities coordinator position would mean giving up her precious alone time. No, it wouldn't work. Sherry would just have to say, automatically the second thought pattern intervened. What a privilege to serve God and these women, Sherry. By giving up a little portion of your life, by letting go of your selfishness, you can make a big difference in some lives. Think it over. Sherry didn't have to think it over. She'd learned to respond unquestioningly to this familiar voice, just as she responded to her mother's, and Phyllis's, and maybe God's too. Whoever it belonged to, it was too strong to be ignored. Habit won out. I'll be happy to help, Sherry told Phyllis. Just send me whatever Margie's done, and I'll get working on it. Phyllis sighed, audibly relieved. Sherry, I know it's a sacrifice. Myself, I have had to do it several times a day. But that's the abundant Christian life, isn't it? Being living sacrifices. If you say so, thought Sherry. But she couldn't help wondering when the abundant part would come in. 7:45 p.m. Dinner finally finished. Sherry watched Walt position himself in front of the TV for the football game. Todd reached for the phone, asking if his friends could come over and play. Amy slipped unobserved into her room. The dishes stayed on the table. The family hadn't quite gotten the hang of helping clean up yet, but maybe the kids were still a little young for that. Sherry started clearing the dishes from the table. 11:30 p.m. Years ago, Sherry could have cleaned up after dinner, gotten the kids to bed on time, and performed Jeff's handed-off project with ease. A cup of coffee after dinner and the adrenaline rush that accompanied crises and deadlines galvanized Sherry into superhuman feats of productivity. She wasn't called Super Sherry for nothing, but it was becoming noticeably harder these days. Stress didn't work like it used to. More and more, she was having trouble concentrating, forgetting dates and deadlines, and not even caring a great deal about it all. At any rate, by sheer willpower, she had completed most of her tasks. Maybe Jeff's project had suffered a little in quality, but she felt too resentful to feel bad. But I did say yes to Jeff, Sherry thought. It's not his fault, it's mine. Why couldn't I tell him how unfair it was for him to lay this on me? No time for that now. She had to get on with her real task for the evening, her talk with Walt. Her and Walt's courtship and early marriage had been pleasant. Where she'd been confused, Walt had been decisive. Where she'd felt insecure, he'd been strong. Not that Sherry wasn't contributing to the marriage. She saw Walt's lack of emotional connectedness, and she had taken upon herself the job of providing the warmth and love the relationship lacked. God has put together a good team, she would tell herself. Walt has the leadership, and I have the love. This would help her get over the lonely times when he couldn't seem to understand her hurt feelings. But over the years, Sherry noted a shift in the relationship. It started off subtly, then became more pronounced. She could hear it in his sarcastic tone when she had a complaint. She saw it in the lack of respect in his eyes when she tried to tell him about her need for more support from him. She felt it in his increasingly insistent demands for her to do things his way. And his temper? Maybe it was job stress or having kids. Whatever it was, Sherry never dreamed she'd ever hear the cutting, angry words she heard from the lips of the man she'd married. She didn't have to cross him much at all to be subjected to the anger. Burnt toast, a checking overdraft, or forgetting to gas up the car, any of these seemed to be enough. It all pointed to one conclusion: the marriage was no longer a team, if it ever had been one. It was a parent-child relationship with Sherry on the wrong end. At first, she thought she was imagining things. There I go again, looking for trouble when I have a great life, she told herself. That would help for a while, until Walt's next temper attack. Then her hurt and sadness would tell her the truth in her mind that she wasn't willing to accept. Finally, realizing that Walt was a controlling person, Sherry took the blame upon herself. I'd be that way too if I had a basket case like me to live with, she'd think. I'm the reason he gets so critical and frustrated. These conclusions led Sherry to a solution she had practiced for years: loving Walt out of his anger. This remedy went something like this. First, Sherry learned to read Walt's emotions by watching his temper, body language, and speech. She became exquisitely aware of his moods, and especially sensitive to things that could set him off: lateness, disagreements, and her own anger. As long as she was quiet and agreeable, things went well. But let her preferences raise their ugly heads, and she risked getting her head lopped off. Sherry learned to read Walt well and quickly. After sensing that she was crossing an emotional line, she would employ stage 2 of loving Walt. She did an immediate backtrack, coming around to his viewpoint, but not really. Quietly holding her tongue or even outrightly apologizing for being hard to live with all helped. Stage 3 of loving Walt was doing special things for him to show she was sincere. This might mean dressing more attractively at home, or making his favorite meals several times a week. Didn't the Bible talk about being this kind of wife? Yeah, Proverbs 31, if you guys haven't ever read that. That's what she's talking about. The 3 steps of loving Walt worked for a time, but the peace never lasted. The problem with loving Walt out of his anger was that Sherry was dead tired of trying to soothe Walt out of his tantrums. Thus, he stayed angry longer, and his anger isolated her more from him. Her love for her husband was eroding. She had felt that no matter how bad things were, God had joined them and that their love would get them through. But in the past few years, it was more commitment than love. When she was honest, she admitted that many times she could feel nothing at all toward Walt but resentment and fear. And that's what tonight was all about. Things needed to change. Somehow they needed to rekindle the flames of their first love. Sherry walked into the family room. The late-night comedian on the television screen had just finished his monologue. Honey, can we talk? She asked tentatively. There was no answer. Moving closer, she saw why. Walt had fallen asleep on the couch. Thinking about waking Walt up, she remembered his stinging words the last time she'd been so insensitive. She turned off the television and lights and walked to the empty bedroom. 11:50 p.m. Lying in bed, Sherry couldn't tell which was greater, her loneliness or her exhaustion. Deciding it was the first, she picked up her Bible from the bedside table and opened it to the New Testament. Give me something to hope for, Lord. Please, she prayed silently. Her eyes fell to the words of Christ in Matthew 5:3-5. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. But Lord, I already feel like that, Sherry protested. I feel poor in spirit. I mourn over my life, my marriage, my children. I try to be gentle, but I just feel run over all the time. Where is your promise? Where is your hope? Where are you? Sherry waited in the darkened room for an answer. None came. The only sound was the quiet pit-pat of tears running off her cheeks and onto the pages of her Bible. What's the problem? Sherry tries to live her life the right way. She tries to do a good job with her marriage, her children, her job, her relationships, and her Lord. Yet it's obvious that something isn't right. Life isn't working. Sherry's in deep spiritual and emotional pain. Woman or man, we can all identify with Sherry's dilemma, her isolation, her helplessness, her confusion, her guilt, and above all, her sense that her life is out of control. Look closely at Sherry's circumstances. Parts of Sherry's life may be remarkably similar to your own. Understanding her struggle may shed light on yours. You can immediately see a few answers that don't work for Sherry. First, trying harder isn't working. Sherry expends lots of energy trying to have a successful life. She isn't lazy. Second, being nice out of fear isn't working. Sherry's people-pleasing efforts don't seem to bring her the intimacy she needs. Third, taking responsibility for others isn't working. A master of taking care of the feelings and problems of others, Sherry feels like her life is a miserable failure. Sherry's unproductive energy, fearful niceness, and over-responsibility point to the core problem. Sherry suffers from severe difficulties in taking ownership of her life. Back in the Garden of Eden, God told Adam and Eve about ownership. Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Genesis 1:28. Made in the image of God, we were created to take responsibility for certain tasks. Part of taking responsibility or ownership is knowing what is our job and what isn't. Workers who continually take on duties that aren't theirs will eventually burn out. It takes wisdom to know what we should be doing and what we shouldn't. We can't do everything. Sherry has great difficulty in knowing what things are her responsibility and what aren't. In her desire to do the right thing or avoid conflict, she ends up taking on problems that God never intended her to take on. Her mother's chronic loneliness, her boss's irresponsibility, her friends' unending crises, her church leader's guilt-ridden message of self-sacrifice, and her husband's immaturity. And her problems don't end there. Sherry's inability to say no has significantly affected her son's ability to delay gratification and behave himself in school in some way. This inability may be driving her daughter to withdraw. Any confusion of responsibility and ownership in our lives is a problem of boundaries. Just as homeowners set physical property lines around their land, we need to set mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual boundaries for our lives to help us distinguish what is our responsibility and what isn't. As we see in Sherry's many struggles, the inability to set appropriate boundaries at appropriate times with the appropriate people can be very destructive. And this is one of the most serious problems facing Christians today, and people in general, really. Many sincere, dedicated believers struggle with tremendous confusion about when it is biblically appropriate to set limits. When confronted with their lack of boundaries, they raise good questions. Number one, can I set limits and still be a loving person? 2, what are legitimate boundaries? 3, what if someone is upset or hurt by my boundaries? 4, how do I answer someone who wants my time, love, energy, or money? 5, why do I feel guilty or afraid when I consider setting boundaries? 6, how do boundaries relate to submission? 7, aren't boundaries selfish? Misinformation about the Bible's answers to these issues has led to much wrong teaching about boundaries. Not only that, but many clinical psychological symptoms such as depression, anxiety disorders, eating disorders, addictions, impulsive disorders, guilt problems, shame issues, panic disorders, and marital and relational struggles find their root in conflicts with boundaries. This book presents a biblical view of boundaries, what they are, what they protect, how they're developed, how they're injured, how to repair them, and how to use them. This book will answer the above questions and more. Our goal is to help you use biblical boundaries appropriately to achieve the relationships and purposes that God intends for you as his child. Sherry's knowledge of the scriptures seems to support her lack of boundaries. This book aims to help you see the deeply biblical nature of boundaries as they operate in the character of God, his universe, and his people. Whew, okay. Alrighty then. That is chapter 1. It's quite a lengthy chapter. I think all the chapters are pretty much about the same amount of pages. It's a little bit of a reading, but I'm willing to do it because I think there's people especially on YouTube, that need to learn about boundaries that may not have been taught them as children. And so as adults, they are confused about where somebody begins and ends and where they begin and end. And they expect people to almost be like, I don't know, extensions of themselves, probably. Oh, thanks, KK. I know some people are probably bored. They don't like it. I apologize for those people. I think what I'm going to do is continue to do the Boundaries book on Saturdays, since it is my Sabbath day. And it's a biblical book. So I think I'll do that, and I'll finish up that other book on the Sundays. And during the week, I'll do like dishwashing videos. And although I am going to do a dishwashing one today too, I'm probably going to go do a little bit of a workout first, and then I'll come back and do my dishes after 5 o'clock, because 5 o'clock is when the Shabbat ends. That's when I do my Havdalah, which is the closing out of Shabbat. And I really should take some time and put on some nice Messianic music and honor the Sabbath day. Tomorrow I will be going to church, and I kind of prayed about that because I wasn't sure. I kind of wanted to start my own little thing in my home. And then I thought about it and prayed about it. I thought that's a lot of work, especially right now in the winter. People are not going to want to come out. And with COVID, people are going to be leery about it and stuff. So probably I'll just stick with going to the church and doing things that way for now. Once I have some money, maybe I can do meetups and see if anything comes of it. But for right now, I think I'm going to just keep on going to the fellowship that I started going to. I prayed and said, God, if you really want me to go to this church, then find me a ride. And lo and behold, my little voicemail was jingled by the lady that said she would give us a ride to church as long as I'm willing to go to prayer first. So, okay, I can do that. It gets a little overwhelming because of sensory issues and stuff like that. That just sometimes a lot of that crosstalk can get to me. I don't mind it too much. I'll just kind of stay in my own corner and, participate when I can. And usually the one that leads the prayer is pretty good. So keep me occupied and focused. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, for now I'm going to go unless anybody wants to give some input or insight or whatever. Hopefully you'll like this book, like I said, better than the other book that I was reading. Then you can take your pick. You can either chime in on Saturdays for the Boundaries book, or you can come in on Sundays. Oh, careful of my foot. You mean this foot? Matthew got me one of these arch support things for inside my shoe, and I've been wearing it just like to walk around, and it's helping a lot. So maybe that is what I needed, was just a little bit of cushioning for now. I will be seeing a podiatrist whenever they get the appointment made, but yeah. So thanks for your concern about that, though, KK. That means a lot. All right. Nobody's got anything else to add or say. Hello to anybody out there that watches this a little bit later. We are doing the Boundaries book now on Saturdays. I'll put that in my community post too, so everybody knows. Boundaries will be Saturday. Dealing with People You Can't Stand will be Sunday. There's not much left of that book, but I'll continue that on until we're done with it on Sunday at 1. And then Sundays will be done, and we'll just stick with Boundaries on Saturdays and do something else on Sundays. So sounds good to me. Hopefully that works for y'all. Let's see. I got more to say, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to do it on the dish duty video after my workout. So, that's why you said careful of my foot, because of the working out. Oh no, I'm nursing my foot along. Don't worry about that. I'm not stepping, bending, stretching, standing on my toes, nothing like that. I'm going to be uber careful about that because I don't want to do any damage. But I can at least stand and walk a little bit more. I've been icing it and putting my foot up, and now I got this little support thing, so hopefully we'll be good to go. But I am going to try to do something like little bit of dancing, but not like straining myself like I used to or anything like that. I'll probably pretty much stay in one place and use mostly my arms. But I want to lose this weight, y'all. So something's got to give, But at least this foot is supported now. I'm going to put some decent shoes on And I'm going to try to stay as stationary as possible without moving through the floor or anything. I'll just kind of stand in one place. I think I'll be okay. I don't want to damage it further though. But basically what they said was it's kind of a gradual deterioration, progression because of age. I'm old. I'm 55 now. I'm going to be 56 in August. So I'm no spring chicken. Eventually the bones and stuff decide, time to start going bye-bye because this person is not going to need us much longer and she'll be leaving the earth someday soon. So anyway, while I'm here and have to use this little pesky foot, I will guard it. Don't worry. All right. I will see you soon. Sometime after 5. We'll try to aim for like 6. And I will be doing my dishes, cleaning my kitchen probably, maybe doing a little bit of organizing, cleaning out some containers I need to go through and sort things so I can chat with y'all while I do that. I'll probably go on StreamYard so anybody can join me up on the panel if you want to. If you don't, that's fine too. But I like having panel guests sometimes. Haven't had one in a while. But I'm looking forward to that. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you that want to come back at 6 o'clock. Friends, enemies, frenemies, whatever. Feel free to come on back and I'll see you at 6. Everybody be blessed and I'll see you soon. Shalom.